Two men get married in the same year. Same city, same income bracket, same big dreams. 5 years later, one of them is running his own company, making decisions on his own terms, respected by everyone around him. The other one is still in the same job, still asking permission to spend his own paycheck, still shrinking every time his phone rings. Same starting line, completely different finish. It wasn't luck. It wasn't who they married. It was something neither of them understood at the time, something almost nobody says out loud because it sounds harsh. Here it is, marriage doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you already were, and then it multiplies it by 10. If you walk into it strong, it makes you stronger. If you walk into it unfinished, it puts your unfinished parts on display for the rest of your life. Stick with me, because by the end of this video you'll know exactly which one you're walking toward, and what to do about it before it's too late to change course. Section 1. The real variable nobody talks about. There's an old idea, repeated by strategists for centuries. Never take on a heavy responsibility while you're still weak. And there's no responsibility heavier, more public, or more permanent than building a life with another person. Marriage isn't a personality transplant. It's an amplifier. Whatever leverage you walk in with, financial, emotional, professional, gets turned up. Whatever leverage you're missing gets exposed. And leverage here doesn't just mean money. It means options. It means the ability to make a decision without your whole world collapsing if it doesn't work out. Here's the rule strategists have used forever. The person with options sets the terms. The person without them adapts to whoever has them. That single idea explains more about how relationships actually function than almost anything else. And almost nobody teaches it before the wedding, only after. So here's the real question this video is built around. Does that mean you have to wait until you've made it to commit to someone? Does it mean everyone who got married early is doomed? No, but to answer that properly, you need to see exactly how this plays out in real life first. Section 2. A story that plays out quietly everywhere. A man I knew got married at 22. Entry-level job, modest salary. His wife had a stable position at a bank, secure, dependable, tied to a specific city. Because her job anchored them to that city, he stayed too. 5 years passed. He was still in the same role. Meanwhile, opportunities came, a move that could have changed his entire career trajectory, a door to something bigger. He didn't walk through it. If he'd been on his own, he might have taken the risk, relocated, rebuilt, bet on himself. But he wasn't on his own anymore, and he hadn't built the foundation to make that bet from a position of strength. Covering the bills and keeping the household stable quietly became his only goal. His world shrank to fit inside that goal. He kept waiting for some breakthrough that would change everything, and it never came. Because breakthroughs that arrive by waiting almost never do. Was his wife the problem? Not really. Here's the uncomfortable part. The real mistake wasn't getting married. It was the timing. At 22, he took on a responsibility the size of a mountain before he understood how heavy mountains actually are. That's not a story about one unlucky guy. That's a pattern playing out in apartments and houses everywhere, completely silently. Section 3. Why weakness gets punished, not pitied. Being broke isn't a moral failure, but financial instability does something specific and corrosive. It strips you of your biggest asset, which is your sense of agency. And the world responds to agency, not intentions. When you're operating from a weak position, everything you do gets reinterpreted through that lens. Show love, and it can read as desperation. Stay loyal, and it can read as having no other option. We're told that the kindest, most agreeable people are the ones who get rewarded. The truth is messier. The people who get hurt most often are good people who never built the strength to protect themselves. We like to think of marriage as purely emotional. In practice, it also runs on an unspoken negotiation: what you contribute, what you can absorb, what you bring to the table. When one partner enters that negotiation from a position of real weakness, the relationship stops being a partnership of equals and starts running on imbalance. One person ends up relying on the other's patience rather than contributing as an equal. And patience, unlike love, has a limit. No relationship and no empire was ever built on someone else's pity. History backs this up. Julius Caesar didn't let emotional entanglements get ahead of his strategy. He secured his position first and used alliances, including personal ones, to build from a place of strength, not need. The sharp ones build their foundation first and think about partnership second. Most people do it backwards: commit first, and spend the rest of their life trying to catch up to the responsibility they already signed up for. Section 4. The myth that marriage fixes money problems. Here's a hard truth: getting married rarely solves financial stress. Usually, it multiplies it. Money pressure at home creates a particular kind of weight. The research on this is consistent. Financial strain is one of the most reliable predictors of conflict in a relationship. And when conflict rises, affection quietly exits. The daily grind of just getting by turns people into machines instead of partners. The phrase, "I love you," lands completely differently when it's said in abundance versus said in survival mode, in scarcity. It can start to sound like an obligation instead of a gift. We've been sold a comforting story for generations, that struggling together now means things will magically sort themselves out later. It sounds noble. It's also one of the most common traps out there, because relationships don't just test your intentions, they test your capacity. When money's tight, every small mistake gets magnified. Every decision gets cross-examined. There's rarely one big dramatic moment. It's a slow accumulation of small frictions, and some of those frictions never fully heal. Researchers who study long-term relationships have found something counterintuitive. Partnerships forged primarily under financial survival pressure often aren't running on love at that point. They're running on endurance. People stay together to get through, not necessarily because the relationship itself is thriving. And here's the trap inside the trap. People assume money fixes it later. It usually doesn't. The patterns you build under pressure, who defers to whom, who apologizes more, who shrinks, tend to calcify. Your bank account can change. The relationship's internal wiring usually doesn't, unless you deliberately rebuild it. A habit of constantly accommodating doesn't disappear with a raise. It becomes identity. And identity is much harder to renegotiate than a budget. Section 5. How this looks from the outside. Picture an average guy, decent salary, zero savings, visiting his in-laws for a holiday. Nobody insults him directly. Nobody has to. There's just a faint, unspoken chill in the room. His voice gets quieter whenever money comes up. Slowly, even within his own extended family, he starts feeling like an outsider. Miss one payment, skip one celebration you can't afford, and an invisible question mark appears over your character, one that never quite goes away. Real leadership isn't about who talks the loudest in the room. It's about a kind of gravitational pull, the ability to make your own decisions and walk your own path with conviction. Someone who can't move freely in his own life has nothing to offer anyone else as direction. If every decision gets filtered through, will this cause a fight instead of is this right? That's not partnership. That's just managing a situation you feel trapped inside. The question worth sitting with is simple. Are you actually building a life, or slowly negotiating away pieces of yourself to keep the peace? Section 6. What people who actually build big things understand. People who go on to do remarkable things tend to learn one thing early. Short-term comfort is never worth more than a clearly defined goal. They don't let outside noise, what people expect, what looks normal on a timeline, rush their biggest decisions. For them, timing matters more than how something feels in the moment. Imagine if they'd caved to social pressure and committed to everything at 25, before they had any real sense of who they were. Would they have built what they built? Probably not, because attention gets divided, and the obsessive focus required to build something significant doesn't survive being split 3 ways. For a lot of people, the real dream is simply escaping instability. But rush into commitment before you've built that foundation, and pursuing your own goals can start to feel selfish by comparison, even though it isn't. This isn't only about money. Taking on major responsibility from a position of weakness usually means operating on someone else's terms instead of your own. You lose the habit of living by your own standards. You get good at compromising, and eventually, compromising becomes your default setting in every area of life, not just at home. There's an old observation. People are so trusting that those looking to take advantage will always find someone ready to be taken advantage of. Whether intentionally or not, social pressure can work the same way, using your own desire for stability against you. The relationship becomes a structure where every move is monitored, every choice gets second-guessed, and you start adjusting your own voice down just to avoid friction. Bit by bit, your bigger ambitions quietly die. Eventually, you stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What am I allowed to want?" That posture doesn't stay home either. It follows you to work, to the boss who oversteps, to the unfair ask you accept because pushing back feels too risky. But real strength was never about agreeing with everything. It's about knowing when to say no, and about being willing to walk away from rooms where you aren't respected. Section 7. What strength actually requires. So here's the real answer to the question from the top of this video. Does that mean you stay single until you've made it? No, strength was never about having a fortune. Strength is about having options, being positioned so that if someone treats you badly, you can walk away without fear. That's the actual definition of power, and it doesn't require millions. What it does require is a stable income, not just enough to get by, but enough to actually build something. A buffer, most financial experts point to roughly 6 months of essential expenses. So a lost job doesn't mean a collapsed life. A clear sense of direction in your career, and the emotional discipline to make decisions based on reasoning instead of pressure or panic. If you're well into your 30s and you still haven't built any of that, the issue was never the idea of marriage. The issue is how you've structured your life leading up to it. Even so, don't rush the other direction either. Build your foundation first. Adding another person into a structure that isn't stable yet doesn't make it stronger. It usually makes it weaker. The right age society hands you exists for society's convenience, not for your development. Your actual age matters far less than where you're actually standing right now. Make decisions based on your real capacity, not a clock someone else set for you. The right decision, made at the wrong time, can still wreck your life. So is getting married the end of the story? Or is it actually where your real test begins? Closing. If you feel like you're standing in a cage right now, you're not finished. But you do need to get sharper than you've been. Start with your earning power. Find ways to grow it, whatever that takes. Sharpen your skills. Change paths if you have to. Right now, that has to be priority one, even above keeping the peace at home, because the kind of peace that comes from an empty bank account isn't real peace. It's the quiet before a storm. Let go of the easygoing guy who never pushes back image. I'm not telling you to become difficult. I'm telling you to drop the version of yourself that feels obligated to shrink. Before any decision, ask one question. Does this make me stronger or does it make me smaller? Take the wheel back on the small decisions. Stop over-explaining every move you make, just do the work. Stop needing to constantly justify yourself, because the moment you start over-explaining is usually the moment your position starts weakening. This path isn't easy. It's genuinely hard, but it's not impossible. People rebuild themselves in the middle of their lives all the time, and you can too. I'm not telling anyone to stay single forever. Timing matters more than emotion. Get married, absolutely. But do it when you actually have something to bring to the table, when the decision is yours, made on your terms, not because of pressure from anyone else. Strength tends to respect people who know how to wait, and people who lose the ability to say no rarely get respected at all. If any of this hit close to home, tell me in the comments. Have you ever made a promise before you'd actually built solid ground under your own feet? Are you willing to trade today's comfort for real freedom down the line? If this made you think differently, drop a comment and let me know. And stick around, next week's video is going to challenge how you think about this even further.